Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of Western Journalism, and it says, Trump needs Putin-style parade. Victory Day, and I'll tell you what they've got to say about this. And the hamster here. According to internet pundit Matt Drudge, Trump needs to display America's military muscle in pretty much the same way the Russians display theirs. The creator and editor of the Drudge Report took to Twitter on Tuesday to opine that Trump needs a military march. A commenter linked his tweet to a story mail detailing Russia's latest ceremonial show of force. May 9th is Victory Day in Russia, of the defeat of Nazi Germany. And the occasion for military of the countries traditionally more than the U.S. Vladimir Putin used the day to create an impressive display of Russian force, marching 10,000 troops and rolling 114 units of heavy military equipment and vehicles through the Red Square in Moscow. Forces much for me. The armed forces of Russia are capable of repelling any potential aggression. Impassioned speech. There was no, there is no, and there will be that could ever enslave our people. The Kremlin also deployed a particularly effective weather controlling technology to provide good weather for the parade. Controlling chemicals did hold off the rain. They failed to clear the low-hanging clouds. Putin was thus forced to cancel a flyby of Russian planes that had flown combat missions in Syria. That the U.S. responded with its own military Trump's mind before. It'll scroll up just a little more for me. There we go. The president wanted to include an array of military vehicles in his inaugural parade, according to the Huffington Post. The inauguration committee was seriously considering adding military. Read a Pentagon email obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. According to Politico, Drudge's might just gain the attention of President Trump in the White House numerous times in recent weeks to communicate regularly with Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner. I don't know. I mean, you can comment and tell me whether you think that's a good idea or not. I don't think it's a good idea. Ever show hand. Ever. And, you know, a bunch of grandstanding. I don't know. The thought that keeps running through my mind is a little less talk, a lot more action. But you don't tell everything that you know. It's time for it to be, you put it out there, but you don't parade it. And then there, I guess, you know, on the other hand, there's that old Southern saying about you really enjoy our crazy, we put it right out on the front porch. And I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea, but hey, we've got here. This is off the All News Pipeline. The hammer is about to drop on D.C. elites. Panic hits after Comey firing. And Rice demands immunity. Dropped a massive bombshell yesterday while guest hosting for Alex Jones at InfoWars, stating that of FBI Director James Comey, his sources contacted him to reveal that Susan Rice's lawyers have now reached out to the FBI to request immunity because she is terrified. Here, before we get to the bigger picture and how DC elites are in full-out panic mode after Comey's dismissal. Cernovich was the first to reveal that it was Security Advisor Susan Rice that unmasked American citizens' names, specifically members of Donald Trump's campaign, and two, that members of the media, including Bloomberg News and the New York Times, had the full story but were sitting on it. Approximately 14 hours after Cernovich blew wide open, when Bloomberg rushed to publish their own article on it the next morning. Of 2017, it was reported that Rice has refused to testify. Response from South Carolina representative who appeared on America's Newsroom on Fox News and said there are other ways to invite people other than by a letter. Penis. You shouldn't have to use National Security Advisor, but if you do, you do. She unmasked American citizens' names, but she has denied in interviews that it was done for political purposes. Asserts that Comey was an agent of the deep state who has been protecting Obama, Huma Abedin, and Weiner, the Clintons, Loretta Lynch, and others, including Susan Rice. About Rice's lawyers reaching out to request immunity, apparently in exchange for testimony. Critical when we consider that if true, Rice's lawyers are scrambling to get an immunity deal in place while the acting director, Andrew McCabe, is still in charge since Comey's firing, as we see in a new report from Newsweek, shows that McCabe's time may also be limited because he is also under investigation over the Clinton emails. Rice doesn't get her deal now, she may never get one. Those concerns came after revelations by media outlets, including Wall Street Journal, that committee affiliated with Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who has ties to Bill and Hillary Clinton, $500,000 to the 2015 Virginia State Senate campaign of McCabe's wife, Jill McCabe. She lost the election. $207,788 from the Virginia Democratic Party. Chuck Grassley of Iowa, chairman of the Senate committee, a letter to Comey on March 28th expressing concerns about McCabe's involvement in the Clinton email matter that his wife received. Has undermined public confidence in the reality, Grassley wrote. And there is, says, listen to Cernovich below before we move on to absolute hysteria and panic from DC elites since the Comey firing, and how that may just have been the beginning because the hammer is getting ready to drop on all of their heads. So if you want to listen to that, you can pull that up and listen to that. The article continues. It says, while the news of Comey's firing brought about the predictable criticisms from the mainstream media and the DC elites, as with any action, statement, or presidential duty Trump makes, the utter scope of the hysteria and ink dedicated to the removal of Comey, which over the last few months has been called for by members of both sides of the political aisle, of sheer panic. President Trump tweeted out following the video yesterday, which highlights the amount of times the Democrats bashed Comey, demanded he resign or be fired, claimed they had no confidence in him. The very same people that are now howling in every other headline and interview about him being fired by Trump. Highlighted claims from liberals and the media, which is that President Trump Russian investigation, which has been denied emphatically by none other than the acting director of the FBI just this morning during congressional testimony when Senator Marco Rubio asked him point blank if the dismissal of Comey had any way impeded, interrupted, stopped, or negatively impacted any of the work, any investigation, or any at the Federal Bureau of Investigations. McCabe's reply was, as you know, Senator, the work of the men and women of the FBI continues to, despite any changes in circumstances, any decisions, so there has been no effort to impede our investigation to date. Everyone knew investigations were still continuing and screaming about the firing of a man they have spent months hammering and demanding his resignation, which makes it pretty obvious that there is something beneath it all. Rubio just made sure that it was now public record that McCabe's answer was an emphatic no. I did wonder about the answer. Rather than just saying no, investigations had not been hampered in any way. He specifically termed it been no effort to impede our investigation. No one was trying to impede any investigation. He was asked if Comey's termination had negatively affected or impeded any investigations. All investigations are still ongoing, and that all is going to change is someone else will be put in charge of the FBI. Nominates a replacement and the Senate confirms that choice. It is only logical to wonder why everyone from John McCain to Democratic politicians to the established media are completely freaked out. The removal of a man that members of both sides of the aisle, including some media outlets, have been demanding the removal of for months is completely out of proportion. And sheer terror that the deep state house of cards are now beginning to fall, and James Comey was just the beginning. To distract us from, perhaps, is the most important question, and well, as an explanation of extreme reaction to Comey's firing, as well as Susan Rice's demand for immunity, if accurate, are trying to distract us from. To date, every Democrat, including former Obama officials, after months of ongoing investigations, starting with the unmasking of Americans' names by Susan Rice and others in the intelligence community, have said they have seen no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia in regards to the 2016 election. So why do they keep talking about it and deflect it all day long as to what they are attempting to distract us from? The reader should feel free to do so in the comment section. James Comey is the first step taken to eventually get those answers. And folks, that is exactly why DC elites, the mainstream media, and the Democrats are freaking all out right now over Trump firing Comey. The swamp is being drained. I have is off of BizPack Review. And I may have to reload this page because it's got a script on it. I'm freaking out about. Doggone hamster in a panic here. Thought I had that straightened out, but let's try something else and see if that will work. All we can do is give it a shot here and see if we can get her to load. I wish they'd take that script off of their site. I like their articles that they put out, but Lord have mercy, it's a pain in the derriere to get them to load. Okay, looks like it's going to work. Trump fumes over leaks, issues direct warning to James Comey. You better hope there are no secret tapes. President Donald Trump has taken the gloves off against former FBI Director James Comey as stories began leaking to the press that Comey had supposedly refuted the president's claim that he was not under investigation for Russian collusion. President Trump issued a warning on social media. James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press, he wrote on Friday. Circulating through the mainstream media and social media can be seen below, and they have a list of tweets and things here. And up here for me. See, it says new from NBC News. Comey did not request and did not tell him he wasn't under investigation. That was a tweet that was put out. It says Trump also responded to complaints from the mainstream media that he contradicted his staff as to why Comey was fired when he told NBC's Lester Holt that he had made the decision before consulting with his attorney general and deputy attorney general. And get it to scroll up a little bit more. Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, he told Holt on Thursday. That contradicted what the White House had said previously when they explained that the president took the recommendations of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the Director Rod Rosenstein, and it jumped on me, hang on. Well, it just freaked out. Hang on. There we go. Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, he told on Thursday. That contradicted what the White House had said previously when they explained the president took recommendations of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And there's some tweets here that Trump put out. It says, active president with lots of things happening, and it's not possible for my surrogates to stand at the podium with perfect accuracy. Maybe the best thing to do would be to cancel all future press briefings and hand out written responses for the sake of accuracy. And he smashed the media's consistent drumbeat, pushing the Russian hacked the election narrative. He tweeted, when James Clapper himself and virtually everyone else with knowledge of the witch hunt says there is no collusion, when does it end? This article is off of Liberty Writers. Moments ago, Trump threatened James Comey. Look what Trump will leak about him. President Donald Trump said on Friday that he may have recorded a conversation with James Comey. This is massive. In a tweet, Trump said that he would leak conversations between him and Comey to the press. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Trump is going to drain the swamp. Trump said on recently that he was looking for an excuse to fire Comey. You can see exactly what he said about him in a video here if you want to pull it up and listen to it. White House has said that Rod Rosenstein suggested that Trump acted on it. The reason Trump fired him was because of the terrible job Comey did at investigating former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Trump is about to drop the hammer. Are you ready? All these crooked swamp monsters better beware. The article is off of Breitbart. It says Trump's legal authority to fire Comey. President Donald Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey is entirely legal, both under federal law and under the U.S. Constitution. Such a high-profile firing is, of course, always a hot political issue, regardless of who occupies the White House, but is not any sort of legal issue, despite the hyperventilating language the president's critics are using to cast his decision in a negative light. Establishment media outlets and the president's political opponents are using words like coup or cover-up and constitutional crisis to describe Trump's decision on Tuesday to fire Comey, using legal terms like obstruction of justice, which is a felony, and invoking the I word, impeachment. Politicians should try switching, breathlessly twisting this political situation into a large one is utterly baseless. Under a federal law enacted in 1976 and found at 28 U.S.C. S. 532, note, the Federal Bureau of Investigation serves up to a 10-year term, during which time he can be removed by the president for any reason. Erroneously claim that this means he is guaranteed to serve a decade. He is not. Instead, this law guarantees that there would never be another J. Edgar Hoover, who controlled the FBI for 38 years, spanning 6 presidencies, and reportedly developed dossiers containing embarrassing details on countless political and public figures. That no one person should have such vast investigative power over American citizens for so long and codified into statute. A director may not serve more than one 10-year term. The number 10 is a ceiling, not a floor. It never says they are guaranteed to get the full 10 years. To the contrary, although expect a full-length tenure, the president may remove them at will for any reason or no reason at all. He made many friends during his long career. Leaders from across the political spectrum in both parties heavily criticized him over the past year, as explained by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in Rosenstein's memo to Attorney General Jeff Sessions recommending that Comey be fired. Not only does federal statute authorize the president to do this, it demands that every president must have such discretion. The Constitution commands that the president shall take care of the laws be faithfully executed, because he is only one man. The president's enforcing of the laws of the nation is done through the people who serve under him in his administration. He makes thousands of appointments. The highest ranking officers must first be approved by the Senate. The lower ranking ones are appointed directly. For the first 145 years of the nation's history after the Constitution was adopted, all branches of government agreed that the president's power to appoint a subordinate officer includes the power to remove any current subordinate whose performance did not satisfy the president, so that the chief executive could appoint a replacement who would serve better. Service that, again, the president must answer to millions of Americans who elected him to office. The Supreme Court upheld this principle in 1926 decision Myers versus the United States, in which the court held is empowered by the Constitution to remove any executive officer appointed by him and with the advice and consent of the Senate. The court in Myers further hold that this power is not subject to the assent of the Senate, nor can it be made so by an act of Congress. In other words, Congress cannot pass a law granting any executive officer a right to stay in office once the president decides to remove it. But in 1935, as part of its massive move to the judicial left, the Supreme Court in Humphrey Executor versus United States overruled Myers. Congress could pass an ordinance. Even then, Humphrey officers who had to serve some that resemble legislation, Federal Communications Commission, or members of the Labor Relations Board, executive officers like the FBI director, serve at the pleasure of the president. Case under the Constitution's Appointment Clause comes Oversight Board. 10. In that case, the court held that it violated the Constitution to allow the cause and Exchange Commission, comprised of members who likewise can be removed by the president only for good cause. The court concluded that this double layer of insulation made the board too accountable to be allowed under the Appointment Clause. As Fund Article 2 of the confers on the president the general administrative control of those executing the laws. It is his responsibility. Stops with the president. The president for whom he cannot continue to be responsible. People on the left can argue all they want about the policies of firing Comey or whether it was warranted from a policy standpoint, but they cannot argue crisis. The FBI is a manifestation the power not only to investigate and seize records and information, but also to arrest, detain, and even use legal force. As envisioned by the framers of the Constitution, democracy demands that the commanding officer of such an incredibly powerful agency is the chief executive officer of the nation. The FBI director serves at the pleasure of the president. The head of the FBI, just dozens of the other political appointees, and is accountable to the American people for how he chooses to wield that power. The next article is off of BizPac Review. It says, Tucker tells Dem rep to stop talking crap on Comey firing. Why say it if you know it's not true? Tucker Carlson lambasted a Democratic congressman and his colleagues for being totally irresponsible in their reactions to James Comey. Fox News host, joined by Representative Steve Patrick Maloney on Wednesday's Tucker Carlson Tonight, addressed the claims by the interference in the 2016 election. Carlson firing to reverse previous calls for his head. He also took issue with many, like that Trump's fear that of the Russian investigation led him to his decision to fire the embattled director. Why are you saying crap like that? Saying crap like that, don't know if it's true, Tucker asked. That's totally irresponsible. Like, why would you say something like that? The New York congressman refuted Carlson's claim that he and other Democrats are parroting Warren's allegations. While not a fan of Comey's, Maloney argued that he did find it of concern that Trump would fire the man leading an investigation of his campaign and those associated with it. That is unprecedented in American history, Maloney said. No president has ever fired an FBI director for that reason. So you know what? Line. Carlson fired back that it is not known if Trump fired Comey for that reason. I would remind you that you're an elected official with the responsibility to say things you can prove, and that they don't know why he got fired. Fired abruptly, without warning, adding that it was extremely disrespectful to FBI plan in place. I remain in the dark as to the details as you do, Carl. People with whom I haven't spoken. The next article is off of Breitbart. Rod Rosenstein resignation threat looks to be fake news. Attorney General Rod Rosenstein countered mainstream media reporting that he had threatened to resign over the firing of FBI Director James Comey. Rosenstein wrote a scathing memo to Attorney General Jeff Sessions Monday, recommending Comey's immediate dismissal. Oops, it jumped on me. Taken up by President Donald Trump. Rosenstein public and congressional trust until it has a director who understands the gravity of the mistakes and pledges never to repeat them. Having refused to admit his errors, the director cannot be expected to implement the necessary corrective actions. White House sources that Rosenstein had threatened to resign over the fact been the decision to fire Comey, leaving a meeting at the Hart Senate building to resign, not quitting. The deputy director of public affairs at the DOJ later confirmed to Breitbart News that Rosenstein never threatened to resign. who has try that again, presidents of both parties, was widely seen as a relatively apolitical consensus pick for the DAG. His supposed threats of resignation was a central part of the Washington Post leaning news outlets' narrative that the decision to fire Comey was an statements continue to posit that the president and deputy attorney general. Reported by the Journal, and acting FBI director says there has been no effort to impeach. I touched on other articles that I read earlier. See, the acting FBI to impede the Bureau's investigation of Russia in the nation, and so that's pretty much a reiteration of what I read you earlier in the other article. This next one is off of BizPac Review. It says Feds strip. This no could potentially happen. Federal authorities have canceled the temporary deferred status of an illegal immigrant who is the face of so-called dreamers in the Atlanta area, open to possible deportation. Customs enforcement stripped deferred action for childhood arrivals protections from Jessica, a 28 national, because she admitted to making false statements. Lawyer to issue a deportation order on May the 3rd. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution say that Colottle's case falls within the government policy not to offer protected status to certain categories of illegal immigrants. Officials have canceled DACA status for about 1,500 people since the start of the program in 2012 because of criminality or gang affiliation concerns. Agency spokesman Brian Cox said in a statement. Deferred action does not in any way prevent the Department of Homeland Security from moving forward with the execution of a removal order, Cox added. Collado was arrested in 2010 and charged with impeding traffic and driving without a license on the campus of Kennesaw State University, where she was studying at the time. Her arrest sparked a political debate over illegal immigration when the school revealed it was charging her in state tuition. She later became vocal proponent of immigration reform and a paralegal at Cuck Immigration Partners, LLC, an Atlanta law firm specializing in deportation defenses. Collado signed a document in 2011 admitting she gave Cobb County law enforcement officers a false home address, charged with felony, although the case was eventually dismissed. Collado's confession was sufficient to cause removal of DACA status, according to ICE. Was subsequently allowed to enter a diversionary program by local authorities, Cox said. However, under federal law, her guilty plea is considered a felony conviction for immigration purposes. Collado is challenging ICE's decision in federal district court in Atlanta, the government of using her as a test case to revoke DACA, exceeding its discretionary authority in an arbitrary and capricious manner, reports the Journal-Constitution. It is completely outrageous, Collado said. On Monday, when I first found out about this, I felt shocked because I didn't know this could potentially happen. The next article is off of Breitbart. America replaced B making run for Congress. It will be 3 years since former tech employee Craig D'Angelo was laid off and forced to train his foreign replacement through the H-1B visa. The 64-year-old is looking to change the very system district in Connecticut, which is currently held. She's useless, D'Angelo said of Esty in an interview with. He was working at what is now Eversource Energy. the company planning service to replace at least 220 American jobs to primarily Indian nationals who was featured on H-1B visa investigative on 60 Minutes last month, said he and his fellow American co-workers, many of whom test. The Americans knew their days were numbered at Eversource Energy, formerly flags vehicles, and when they were fired due to the H-1B visa down. Eventually, D'Angelo said there were left with the entire H-1B visas. Spent even worse, the Americans either complied with replacements or see their severance packages disappear. That the company would say, "You're not being forced to train your replacements, but if you don't," D'Angelo told Breitbart, Texas, "my company bound us to non-disparaging agreements." D'Angelo said, "It's good for a lifetime. You're bound by that contract." One the U.S. on the H-1 balloon to potentially hundreds, and nonprofits are gap. With more entering the U.S. through the visas, Americans are often replaced. "I was very upset and depressed," D'Angelo said. "A lot of people couldn't find work. Lots of the older workers market." Of the 220 American employees fired and replaced from Eversource Energy by H-1B foreign guest workers, D'Angelo remains the only one to unseat Esty to represent the once industrial region of New area that which made it easier for companies to outsource jobs to Mexico and Canada. "She's been of no help whatsoever," D'Angelo said of Esty. "In the years since I was laid off, I've got nothing but frustrated with the lack of action from Democrats and Republicans in Congress to protect American workers and their jobs." D'Angelo said he recently was inspired by a speech Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, gave on the Senate floor. He was lambasting the recent bill as it would have increased the number of foreign workers entering the U.S. under a different foreign guest worker visa known as the H-2B. The employers who abuse the H-2B program go to the greatest lengths to avoid hiring an American worker, Cotton said on the Senate floor. "The program says you have to advertise for the job in advance, and they do, hundreds of miles away in obscure newspapers that have nothing to do with the employer's local economy." D'Angelo said he was impressed by the impassioned plea for Americans. "That's the type of lawmaker I want to be," D'Angelo said. "I want to and talk. The government has made it too easy." Said he has a pending process with hopes that Attorney General Jeff Sessions will take steps toward penalizing employers for some 1.7 million American workers who've been Jesus. America First agenda, Dan. This really. The next article is off of Breitbart. It says videos of ICE arrest trigger open borders, and amnesty activists in Colorado are upset that two Mexican nationals were arrested by ICE agents while they were in the courthouse complex in Denver. Videos of the arrests surfaced, and city officials are being called upon to issue even more sanctuary protections. A lawyer in Denver released the videos. One video shows an arrest by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE officer on the grounds outside the courthouse. The second arrest takes place in a door inside the judicial building. Hans Meyer told the Denver Post that ICE was splitting Mayor Michael Hancock and other city officials asked the agency to halt making arrests at their courthouse. When we have ICE showing up and conducting courthouse drives everyone trusting local government. Meyer added, ICE's city sow terror in our immigration communities, and it's incumbent on us as the city and county of Denver at it, and that needs to happen now. Although Meyer did not identify the man scuffling with officers in one of the videos as his client, it was reported that an ICE spokesman told the local publication that the man arrested was 39-year-old Alvaro Tisro Saucedo, an immigration fugitive. A judge issued a removal order for his deportation in 2012. He's also reported to have 2 misdemeanor convictions. Another attorney with Meyer's firm, Matthew Keller, told the Post that he was just about to leave the outside plaza of the courthouse on May the 5th when he heard a clamor and turned around to see 3 ICE agents arresting his client. Keller told the officers that he wanted to see an ICE arrest warrant for his client, 45-year-old Antonio Garcia, but they declined. Instead, he received a paper with the contact information for the agency's public information officer. Keller told the Post they obviously were waiting on him. I'm not sure how they were able to identify him. The ICE spokesman said the Mexican national had 2 convictions for drunk driving and thus was wanted for deportation. While ICE officer wrestles with the resisting man, a woman can be heard pleading with local police officers to stop ICE from arresting him. You can't do this, the woman yells repeatedly. That's not right. That's not okay. The man appears to resist apprehension. Video. A statement obtained by Breitbart, Texas from ICE says courthouses do not fall under ICE or CBP's, which is the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, policies concerning enforcement actions at or focused on sensitive locations. The Post reported that Denver's mayor, the city council, city attorney, school superintendent, and other officials asked local ICE officials to stop making arrests at courthouses and nearby schools. A spokeswoman for the mayor, Jenna, said, "We is not to potentially put bystanders at risk, hinder the prosecution relationship vital to public safety," she added. And message to ICE that this is not enforcing laws. Police Chief Robert White was reported to have assured the city's residents that his immigrant. And the final article that I have for you this morning, journalism, it says President Trump suggests canceling press briefings. Complains about the accuracy of recent statements made to the White House to the long time to tradition of holding daily White House press briefings. As a very active president with lots of things happening, he wrote on Twitter, maybe the best thing to do would be to cancel for the sake of accuracy. The president's ire reportedly lay with his frustration over what the reasons Director James Comey. During a White House press briefing Wednesday, White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, due to his prior commitments with the U.S., been based on recommendation Rosenstein. She also argued a little bit. She also argued rank and file FBI member president himself contradicted the first claim during an interview Thursday with NBC anchor Lester Holt. "Oh, I was going to fire regardless of the recommendation," he said. Rosenstein made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of the recommendation, I was going to fire him. The second explanation by Huckabee Sanders was contradicted by Andrew G. McCabe, the acting director of the FBI. Director Comey enjoyed broad support with the FBI and still does to this day, he said during a hearing Thursday before the Senate Intelligence Committee. The vast majority of FBI employees enjoyed a deep positive connection to Director Comey. There have also been uncorroborated reports that the president intends to fire current White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. According to New York Post, the president felt embarrassed by a disastrous impromptu news conference outside the White House Tuesday night, in which Spicer some bushes until TV cameramen turned off their lights and agreed not to take video of the briefing. You have everything that I have on this. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a subscribe. That way you'll stay informed.